and I will start in. Welcome everyone. Welcome back to those who've been joining us for the past 5 sessions. We are on number 6 on youth-led philanthropy. My name is Tembegile Masego, and I lead the African Youth Philanthropy Network, and we are building an ecosystem of young leaders in philanthropy who will and are transforming philanthropy. And so thank you so much for joining us on session 6 of the Next Architecture of Philanthropy, where we're not just investigating and diagnosing philanthropy, but we're also co-creating what it can look like for the future. And a policy brief comes out of this. And so we're looking and hoping that you contribute, bring your voices into the room. The discussants are not the only people we want to hear from. Bring the energy. We're all young people, we're all peers in this room. I am not your moderator for today. I'd like to introduce Ewura Adams Karim, hailing from Ghana, the Gold Coast. I don't know if it's still being called that, who is a seasoned professional with over a decade of experience in media, performing arts, and social entrepreneurship, and is very committed to fostering youth and community development in his community. Ewura, over to you, and welcome everyone.
All right, thank you very much, Sunday, and welcome everybody. Good afternoon. It's afternoon here in Ghana, and so good afternoon, good morning, good evening from wherever you might be joining us from. Unfortunately, I am unable to turn on my video because I'm driving and moderating at the same time because I confirmed with Tembi I was going to do this, and I didn't want to turn her down last minute, even though I had a last minute assignment. So I still have to do this behind the steering wheel. And so please pardon me if I do not turn on my video, but I will make sure that you all get to see my face before the call ends. So maybe at some point when I'm able to park somewhere, I would do that. And so please pardon me. But once again, thank you all for being a part of this. It's my first time joining you for this conversation, and I was really looking forward to it because philanthropy on the African continent is becoming a big thing. It's a conversation that's unfolding, and it's worth noting that we have young people across that continent who have decided to take this up and to make it a part of what they do on a daily basis. And so congratulations to all of you for the great work that you do as far as philanthropy is concerned, especially on our continent and in your respective countries. And so let's get straight into the conversation. For today, we're looking at youth leadership in philanthropy, and the conversation this afternoon would be centered around a number of questions that Timby has shared with me from the network. I'm going to try and tweak them a bit just so that we can make the conversation more relatable, more interesting, and not too straitjacket intellectual, right? I hope I have the permission of everybody to do that. Okay, great. I got a thumbs up from Anita, so that's perfect. So maybe let's get everybody to just say a few things about themselves, especially if you're speaking with us today. And so let me start with Aicha. Aicha, hello. Share a few words with us, then before we get into it. Hello, do we still have Aicha with us?
Hello, everyone.
Yeah, great. Hi, Aicha.
Hi, everyone. Nice to meet you. And do you want me to share like just few words or my provocation?
I would like you to share just a few words for a start. I want to go around, give everybody who's supposed to speak today a few words, and then we can go ahead with your provocation. Yeah.
Okay, I just want to say thank you so much for inviting me to be part of this interesting conversation that I was looking for since months, let's say. Happy to be present today to speak about youth, leadership, which is my thing, and of course, philanthropy. I'm looking forward to all the beautiful insights and the conversation and the provocations and everything. Thank you so much.
I hope I got the name right. Nekesa Wamalwa.
Yes, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Ewura. Hi, everyone. My name is Nekesa Wamalwa. I work with TrustAfrica and leading the youth programs within that. I am based in Nairobi, Kenya, and I'm really excited to be able to engage today. Back to you, Ewura.
Thank you very much, Kesa. Do we have Renee, Edward, Mendes?
Renee won't be joining us today, so we can move ahead.
Oh, okay. All right. Thank you, Anita. Okay, so if we do not have Renee, can we have Timotina Bonsu?
Yes. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon from my side of town. My name is Timotina Bonsu, and I work with Core Africa as a partnerships coordinator. I believe that this conversation we're about to have is so, timely, given the current issues we're seeing around global funding for, non-profit organizations and a lot of developmental work. So I'm very excited to be here and to contribute to this all-important conversations. And I'm hoping that the discussions we have here will be taken out of here and, put into some form of policy, some form of implementation and strategy plan so we can, scale it across Africa for all young people. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Timotina Bonsu. Ladies and gentlemen, we will now take Jude Olali Sabla.
Hello, everybody. Good afternoon from Ghana. My name is Jude Olali Sabla, as previously mentioned. I work with Core Africa as a training associate. So I work with Timotina, and also I support the programs team at the African Youth Philanthropy Network. And for me, this discussion covers two sectors I'm very passionate about: young people, one, and secondly, the ecosystem of the philanthropy space and also development space. So I feel that two, as we say, the young people are now taking the leadership roles in all these sectors. So the two different groups or the two different topics here is very dear to my heart, and I'm looking forward to the conversation and how to also contribute. And as Timothy rightfully said, taking the conversation out of here to for it to influence policy and other things that will guide and shape the future of philanthropy on the continent. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Jude Holali Sabla from Core Africa. And of course, last but definitely not the least, Likona Nkunto. I hope I got the name right. If I did not, please mention it properly for me so I keep that in mind.
No, you got it right. You got it right. Thank you.
Perfect.
Hi, everyone. I'm Likona Nkunto from the Eastern Cape of South Africa. And yeah, I'm excited to be here with you guys. I'm working on a project that's focused on repurposing construction waste to make home furnishings. That includes basins and tiles and so on and so forth. So yeah, happy to be here.
Great. It's a pleasure to have you here as well, sir. And thank you so much for the introductions and for, just sharing a few things about what you do and what you're looking forward to, and of course, your excitement to be here. So let me come back to you, Aicha. We'll take your provocation, and then after that, we can get the conversations going. So over to you, Aicha.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. First, I forgot to introduce myself. My name is Aicha. I'm from Algeria. I'm a member of the Higher Council for Youth, and I'm also a member of UNICEF, UNICEF Youth Foresight Fellow. My research is about envisioning the future participation of the Algerian youth in 2050. So speaking, I was actually happy to be given this topic, which is talking about youth leadership in philanthropy. So here we go. So I would like to start with a simple but a little bit uncomfortable question, which is, if young people are constantly described as the future of philanthropy, why are they still so rarely trusted to shape it? Because we see that across Africa, we hear powerful language about youth leadership, youth engagement, youth participation, and youth empowerment. But often like I wonder, are we building a future where young people really lead philanthropy, or are we simply building a future where young people continue to receive philanthropy? Because these are not the same thing. Today, I would like to frame our conversation through a foresight tool I have learned called the Future Triangle. So I would like, if can Tembi please share that picture that I sent you, just to put you in the context. So actually, the Future Triangle helps us understand change by looking at three forces at the same time. So we have the pull of the future, the pushes of the present, and the weight of the past. And let me begin with the future, as we are aspiring the future. What is the future we are trying to reach? For me, the future is not where young people are invited into philanthropy. It is not where young people is like rather where people like co-design it and participating in co-designing the philanthropy. The future is, for me, is not one where like young people are consulted after decisions are made. But it's rather like one there, like when youth like they can participate in making those decisions. The future is not one where youth organizations compete endlessly for small grants while others control the resources. It is one where young people help shape how resources are distributed and what priorities matter. That is the pull of the future that I believe in. But if that is like where we want to go, what is pushing us like forward today? Africa has the youngest population in the world. We have energy, we have creativity, we have lived experiences, we have young leaders organizing communities, responding to crisis, building movement, leading social enterprise, like the organization we are trying to build, and imagining solutions every day. In my own experience as a Youth Foresight Fellow with UNICEF, and through my work with young Algerian people in Algeria, I have seen something extraordinary. Young people don't only have ideas about the future, they rather have ideas for building it. When given meaningful space, they think long-term, they think collectively, they imagine futures that many institutions have not yet considered. These are powerful pushes of the present. So it means like the privilege that we have, or the positive side that we still have, and it can push us to the future. But if these forces, the pushes of the present are not so like they are so strong, why is the progress still so slow? With all this energy, the creativity that we have, but we still that there is like slow progress in integrating youth in philanthropy. This brings us to the weight of the past. And perhaps this is where we need to be most honest, because the challenge is not that young people are absent. The challenge is that the power is absent. Young people are often present in photographs, in reports, in consultations, in decisions. For all of this, but not in decisions. But too often absent from like the rooms where resources are allocated and decisions are made. And I have experienced this, honestly. We are invited to tables, but we don't always help design the table. We are asked like for our opinions. It's real, it happens. Like me as a member of the High Youth Council in Algeria, I've been asked for my opinion about many things, but none of my opinions is taken into consideration. But we don't always like have the influence over outcomes. And sometimes participation becomes like performance rather than a transfer of power. And this is what is happening in most of the countries. That is like quite part we do not like always say out loud. So if philanthropy truly believes in youth leadership, then the question is not how many young people are attend meetings. The question is how much power are young people trusted with? Because leadership without authority is a symbolism, and without resources is expectation. Leadership without decision-making power is participation without influence, as I said before. And so, as we begin this conversation today, I would like to leave us with a challenge. Perhaps the future of philanthropy in Africa does not require us to ask how young people can fit into existing systems. Perhaps the real question is, what would philanthropy look like if young people help redesign the system itself? What would change? What would we stop doing? What would we finally have the courage to do differently? Because the future is not something young people will inherit. It is something they are already trying to build. So the question is whether philanthropy is ready to build it with them. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, Aicha. And those were really, really, very powerful words, very, very instructive words. So, wow, wow. You put me at a spot where I don't know where to even start the conversation from, because then you've left so many questions unanswered in your provocation. But I'm hoping that by the time we're done with this conversation, we should be able to answer all of those questions. And one of the things that obviously stands out is the fact that there are enormous challenges that make it almost impossible, right, for young people to be able to actively provide meaningful leadership in philanthropy. And so I want us to start from that. Let's start looking at the barriers. Let's start looking at the challenges, the bottlenecks, and all of the things that prevent young people from being able to, participate meaningfully, in philanthropy. And let me start with Nekesa, sorry.
Great. Thank you, Ewura. I know earlier you said you don't have a lot to say, but I beg to differ. I might have a lot to say. So bear with me. And thank you so much, Aicha, for that provocation. I think that was a perfect start to this conversation. So I'll just give a bit of a background. When I got the guiding questions for this roundtable, I think my first thought was, oh, wow, they want me to talk about youth inclusion again. But it's not because, it comes at a bad point. It's because it's one thing for African youth to be able to have seats at the table, as Aicha mentioned, and another thing for us to actually consider not sitting on tables that do not serve us and actually coming up to construct ones that do from the scratch. So I think at this point, we don't need more seats. We need to own the furniture factory or whatever we need to be able to build the future that we have. But as I promised earlier, I would be well behaved. So I said I wouldn't make the room uncomfortable. I promised to just smile and talk about log frames and use the word synergy at least 3 times. And thank everyone for capacity building that we're doing. But then I remembered I'm a Pan-African feminist leading youth portfolios on the front lines, and politeness has never funded a revolution. So let's be honest and ask ourselves a fundamental question. Are we funding African self-determination, or are we just managing African survival? So as we all know, Africa is the youngest continent on Earth, yet its resources are largely governed by the oldest, most traditional, and often non-African structures. When philanthropy looks at African youth, we are often viewed as, it is often viewing us through the lens of deficiency, as a demographic dividend to be managed, or a monogamous group of beneficiaries that need to be upskilled. So this has birthed what I would call an ultimate systemic scam in modern philanthropy, which is the training trap. I'm not speaking in abstract. Recently, through our work at the African Youth Panel, we have been carrying out a lot of training sessions across our various project countries. We've spent days in rooms with brilliant young people, facilitating deep, intentional capacity building. But do you know what the single ask or question coming from them was? It was all about resources, capital, material support. All the days and days of beautiful, well-intentioned training that was structured did absolutely nothing to exterminate this structural need. So sitting in these rooms, I started asking myself, these young people are brilliant. These young people are being stifled by financial starvation. So we had to stop and ask ourselves some hard questions. The reflections from these trainings brought up a lot of sobering realization. Whenever young people ask for direct capital to build institutional power, philanthropy immediately redirects them to a workshop. We train them on financial management for money they do not have, while their innate resilience is weaponized against them. Funders look at our work and say, look at how much you achieved with next to nothing. Wow. Using our survival as an excuse to continue giving us next to nothing. We ask them to deliver grand systemic transformation, but our favorite resource to give them is a PDF toolkit and a certificate of attendance. But let's be completely honest about what resources actually mean from the African perspective. It goes far beyond just a cash transfer. We need to talk about time resources and the material realities of survival. Traditional philanthropy loves to train a young person on how to grow a business, completely ignoring their daily priorities. A child who has to spend hours fetching water and vending in the market just to survive the day will never be keen to build an enterprise when they have nothing to eat. You cannot train away hunger. You cannot build a business on an empty stomach and an exhausted spirit. So, what does holistic philanthropy mean, for example? It means us understanding that resources encompass the entire ecosystem of a young person's life. It means providing direct capital to alleviate survival pressures, combined with community infrastructure, systemic networks, and peer-to-peer learning. There's an indispensable magic in peer-to-peer learning. When a young person sees their own life reflected in someone else's eyes, someone who is like them, at a different stage of what they aspire to do, it does wonders for their imagination and agency. And I'm not saying give us mentorship instead of money. I'm saying give us capital and the ecosystem that we need. The money, the networks, the peer reflections, and the infrastructure. Stop replacing material wealth with endless patronizing training toolkits. But of course, I am just an African woman running programs on the ground, so don't take my word for it. If you want to use the sacred Western metrics of credibility and overlook the trust in my words, let's look at data as it is today, because the data explicitly dismantles this paternalistic anxiety that youth cannot be trusted with direct resources. Let's look at the undeniable evidence from models like Give Directly's 1,000 USD and conditional transfers in East Africa, Kenya, for example. We've been able to see a lot of evaluation in the microeconomic published journals from Give Directly's work that have proven that from that 1,000 unconditional cash transfer, we've been able to get a return of 2.5 times local economic multiplication. That means that every single dollar handed directly to an individual grew the local economy by $2.50 because they spent it locally and they boosted the local business revenues by at least 65%. That goes beyond all the other studies that USAID and the World Bank have been able to do that have directly compared us giving young people cash or equivalent cash transfers and the training that they would need. So even by their own favorite metrics, training only made youth better at answering questions about business, while direct resources allowed them to actually build their communities. It turns out that when you give a hungry, brilliant young person $1 instead of a PowerPoint presentation, they actually know what to do with it. I'm sure that's not a surprise to all of us. But the data proves that the institutional anxiety isn't about a lack of youth capacity, as the guiding questions had mentioned, but it's about a severe lack of funder imagination. So if the World Bank, the USAID, Give Directly can admit that cash beats classrooms, I think it's time for philanthropy to start acting like to stop acting like a nervous parent and start acting like a radical partner. So I think that just gives us a bit of a view about what true Pan-Africanism requires of us. We need to look inward. We have a rich historical tradition of community-sourced wealth. We can give ourselves the money, small, coin by coin, generation by generation, African to African, through our own indigenous philanthropic models, our chamas, our mutual aid networks, our collective pools. We must build our own independent capital. We must fund our own liberation so that external donor pressure can never dictate the direction of our movements. True Pan-African philanthropy must move away from colonial patriarchal models of prescribed intentions and move us towards a model of radical solidarity. So let's open up our vaults and let's build our independent wealth ecosystems. Thank you.
Can I say round of applause, ladies and gentlemen, for Nekesa? You've really set the ball rolling. You've touched on all of the critical issues that need to be touched on. In fact, left to me, I would have said there's nothing more to add. Fortunately for us, we still have some more brilliant African youth on the panel who definitely would want to add their voices to this as well. And so let's hit it straight and hear from my Ghanaian sister, Timotina Bonsu.
All right. So thank you so much, Nekesa. I mean, you hit the nail on the head. And I just wanted to, dovetail a bit more into one of the points you made, right? About reconstructing the narrative. We don't need to sit on their table anyways, right? It's their table. They set the rules, so they will play by those rules. But we need to move into a space where we reconstruct things in a space that works for us. Let me just backtrack and then I'll go back to that point. One of the key limitations to African youth driving leadership in philanthropy is actually policy. All right. If you look at the world and how it's been evolving lately, if you look at what we call the underserved communities, the first thing that comes to mind is women. The second thing that comes to mind is, let's say, children, right? But no one ever considers the youth as much as an underserved, community. But we actually are. If you think of even come to the corporate world, now boards are putting percentages to say that each board, organizations have boards that are certain policies or certain rules to say that a board must have 30% or 50% of its executives as women. Where are those policies that say that philanthropy or leadership or resource allocation should include young people, let's say 20% of young people, 30% of young people? It's policy that drives, implementation. It drives legislature in every economy, in every national constitution. If there's no policy that is creating space for young people to actually be part of the decision making, it will always just be a nice to have. Like you said, they invite you to come sit on the table. We want to hear your opinion, but nothing is binding on them. Nothing is, it's not legislative. It cannot be enforced, right? We just want your opinion. We just want your thoughts. But there's nothing that compels us to actually use your thoughts, to actually use your input, to actually allocate resources to you to make something out of it. So that is one thing that needs to change. If you take most of the governments in our countries, right? How many young people are in political positions? How many young people are, leading, the Ministry of Finance or the critical sectors? Very few to none, right? So one of the key bottlenecks that is affecting youth leadership in philanthropy is policy, where we don't set actual accountable policies that can be, upheld legislatively on how to involve the youth. If there's a quota that every government must have at least a 20% representation of the youth, just imagine how much transfer of power that gives the youth. Now we're not just, participating, but we are actually part of the decision makers. We are part of the drivers. We are part of the leaders, right? But to take me back to the point I was making about reconstructing our own, playground, let's take the world of social media. If you come to Ghana, I can tell you there are so many influencers who have huge followings, huge followings in excess of 1 million. Let me tell you what they can do with that. They can raise so much capital. Already, they are making so much money for brands. What is stopping them for using this followership or this influence they have to raise, philanthropy or to drive philanthropy? We don't need to be on the board of the UN. We don't need to be on the board of, let's say, the World Bank. We have our space, and that is on social media. We have our space that is online. We are the digital nomads. That's where we live. That's where we command space. I can't imagine any boomer or a 50-year-old that has so much influence online. All the people driving the followers, if you go on TikTok, Instagram, the young people that are driving influence, having excess in millions of followers are these young people. So we need to leverage the space where we already have that authority. We need to leverage the space where we're already winning, right? And capitalize on that leverage we have to create, that wealth we need to drive the change we want to see. Come to Ghana. Recently, there was an event hosted. It's called Poriel's Pitch. Poriel's Pitch was an event hosted by one young lady. I don't think she's even 30 years old. She hosted an event at the Accra Mall. They took over the entire space. There was so much traffic leading to the Accra Mall in Ghana just a couple of months ago. And it wasn't an organization that hosted this event. It wasn't the government. It was a young lady who has so much following on Instagram, so much following on TikTok, and look at the crowd she pulled. Look at the number of, people she was able to pull into one space just because of her influence. So we really need to start thinking of, where do we already have power? We don't need to be in their setting or in their system of power. There are already spaces where we are thriving, where we are excelling. How can we leverage that? All the followership we have, all the influence we have as young people to drive that, wealth creation that can solve problems, real life problems for our communities, for the economies that we live in. Once we start limiting ourselves to the systems that already have been programmed, the journey, to success or the battle will be so long from us. But we need to start thinking of how we can thrive in the places where we're already market leaders, in the places where we already command so much respect and influence. So I think, just to round up, I'll say that yes, the bottlenecks exist, but I think we need to think about recreating our table. We already have a space where we dominate. So we need to leverage that dominance, right? To create the wealth, that philanthropy we want to see. Because a lot of these young people are thinking entrepreneurship. They want to be rich. They want to create wealth for themselves. But how do we start, bringing them to the awareness that they need to champion wealth creation for community development, and not just to be rich? Because you take the likes of Dulcie and these other influencers, they are driving Range Rovers at their age, less than 25 years. Someone is buying a BMW, less than 25 years, right? And you're saying, if this person has all these resources, is making so much money from all these brands, how can they channel this same energy in raising capital that can serve communities? Because they're already winning in that sector. They're already winning in that space. So that is how I want us to think of it. And that is how I want us to start championing the efforts. We already have a place where we dominate, and we start rewiring our minds to stop thinking of ourselves. I want to be wealthy. I want to be the richest woman as a young person, the youngest, billionaire. I want to be what's her name? One of the Kardashian, Kylie Jenner, the wealthiest young person. But rather think of it as a young person, how can I raise capital? How can I raise funding that solves real problems in communities? And I don't need a UN to do that. I don't need my government to do that. I'm already thriving on social media. I'm already thriving online. I have the influence, I have the followership, and I can achieve that by myself. So this is my submission, and thank you so much for having me.
Wow. Okay. That's some Ghana energy there, man. Great one there, Timotina. Really, really appreciate a little bit on the point that you made mention, and then just give you a classical real life example of how, as young people, we can leverage the influence that we have, especially online or on social media, as you put it. About 2 weeks ago, I raised $4,000. If you convert into USD from Ghana cedis, that's some 40,000 cedis, right? In 24 hours on Snapchat, on my Snapchat account. So there was a young chap that, had burns and needed, of course, his parents could not afford it, and they needed to raise the money for the surgery. I was just online looking at stuff, and then I came across the post on the nurse's, story. And so I reached out. I'm like, how much do you need to take care of this kid? And she goes like, we need between 15,000 cedis to 20,000 cedis. So that's roughly around $1,500 to $2,000 to be able to do that. And it's on a Wednesday. I tell her, okay, you know what? I'll get back to you. So I go to sleep, and I feel very uncomfortable about it. And then I hit her up on Thursday, and I say, look, I'm going to fund this. Of course, I had the money. I could pay for it entirely. But on a second thought, I said, well, let people benefit from this blessing as well. So let me see what I can do on my Snapchat. And so I go on Snapchat, and I tell people I need to raise 20,000 cedis. I'm willing to meet halfway, so I'm going to raise 10,000. I want people to match up the 10,000 cedis. And all I need is 100 people to give me 100 cedis each. And so that's how I usually do it. I don't just give the bulk amount and say everybody give no. I give a specific number of people. I need 100 people to give me 100 cedis. When I add that, I'm raising that amount of money I want to raise. And that's what I did. And in less than 24 hours, I raised ×2 of what I needed. Right? And that's how powerful social media is. And that's how powerful as young people we can leverage it. If we build credibility for ourselves and we've built a certain community that people would believe you and trust you to be able to give you such amounts of money to do some of these things. So that's a really solid point there. And I appreciate that you made mention of it. Social media as our space. Let's take advantage of it. Let me come to you now, Jude Sabla.
Yes, following Nekesa and Timotina, I'm just thinking about what else I could add. And as Nekesa was speaking, I was just taking note of the lines and bars she was dropping. And also when Timotina was talking about policy, and I was just making notes and thinking about rooms I've been in that I, after going into those rooms, I realized that I'm just there as a symbol of youth representation, not really to contribute to the conversation. And in those times, what I could have done differently. When Nekesa was talking, she mentioned that not representing at tables that doesn't serve us. I think as young people, it's about time we hold our grounds and also hold the door for other young people to come into these rooms. And I say that because in previous years, I've had encounter with other groups or organizations that would want to feel youth inclusive and they would invite you to the room, and you see most of the conversation is just being had around you, not with you. In such spaces, as of now, I would have left such a table because it's not serving the young people. At the end of the day, as Nekesa said, there will be a photo op and your face will be there as a young person, and it would go to say that a young person was consulted in making this decision, and you weren't consulted, you were just there as a token. And that leads me to another topic I've been talking about for a while now, tokenism. In a couple of months ago, I saw a social media post from one of the East African countries, and there was a committee that was set up to look into youth development. And I glanced through the picture. I think it was from Malawi, if I'm not mistaken. And the youngest person I could see would probably be in his 40s. So I took a screenshot and I sent it to a friend in Malawi. I'm like, are you people playing? Because I could see people like that well over 60 years, 50 years in that. And these are people that are supposed to make decisions on behalf of young people. It goes to say that the continent has not really, or even globally, the trust for young people has not gotten to the level we want it to be. For people to meaningfully engage, you need to be able to trust them with what they need for them to meaningfully engage. When Aicha was talking, she mentioned that leadership without power is symbolism, and that is what is happening in most rooms we enter. You are just there, but no power to really contribute to the decision making. As she said, there are some days where she's giving her opinions and it doesn't lead to anywhere. What then do we do? I wouldn't want to repeat what has been said. Nekesa has mentioned a number of ways we could look at that. Timotina has also talked about policy. I want to talk about policy enforcement as one of the things. There are a lot of, with the exception of private or funding organizations that could say that this is my indicator. If you don't have this number of young people, I'm not giving you my money. Aside that, a lot of government systems don't support young people, youth representations. And even when there is the policy, there's no enforcement. You go around, you could take a survey around the continent when it comes to youth ministries and all that. And the majority of the people in decision-making roles, and emphasis on decision-making roles, are people not in the youth bracket, but they are in the decision-making roles, and even translating to other private organizations and even in the NGO space. And it's so sad to see that youth-led organizations are feeding into these systems that bring young people down. There are times I've had conversation with fellow young people who maybe apply to youth-led organizations or youth and empowering organizations, and they are asking of certain qualification that you have no business asking a young person those qualifications. If someone has between the 5 years of graduating from school, you're asking the person, have you managed a team of 20? Do you have 3 graduate degrees? Do you have this number of years experience? If you really trust the young person that in the last 2 years you've done this, you are trainable, I'll be able to support you do this, then you do have no business asking those young people those requirements. There are some policies or some programs that are built supposedly for young people, but doesn't support the young people. About last month, I was in a room where we were discussing one of such projects, and we received a petition from a group of young people over a bank, because apparently this bank has funding to support young people, young entrepreneurs, and you're asking that young entrepreneur to bring their board of directors, their whatever with registration. Are you being serious? And sometimes it's very sad. And in such rooms, that is where we need to live. Because the more you sit on such tables, it's assumed that you are being satisfied, but you are not. So these systems are barriers that keeps young people from thriving. Because if you are asking this young person whose business is 6 months old or 1 year old to bring all this documentation, and even when you come to Ghana, if your business is into the service product manufacturing, and all that, when you need to go to the FDA. I was talking to one young entrepreneur who is into chocolate making, and she told me that, dude, it's difficult for me to get the FDA to certify my product because for each of the flavors I produce, they're asking me to bring 700 milligram bars, of which she sells one for 400 cedis. So 7 of those multiply, and she has 7 of those flavors. I'm trying to tell that young person who is struggling to even meet their production cost to bring all this. It doesn't make sense. We have tax holiday for a number of businesses. How then do we put in place such policies to protect the young person? To say that as a young business between the ages of 18 to 35, if you're a young person owning a business, can we give you this tax holiday? Can we give you this leverage for you to really thrive, for you to really build? These are the systems that I'm looking at. When Martina said policy, rightfully so, around the continent, there are no government policy systems to really say, young people, if you're a young owner between this age and that age, this policy protects you. As we've had the conversation about women equality among equity around the continent and the globe, can we start having with groups like us here, can you start having conversation and pushing for these policies to protect young people? If as individuals, there's so much you can do, and there's so little you can achieve at the end of the day. But if we put ourselves together, when Ewura was talking, it was like he could have paid the money out of pocket, but how many people can he support as an individual? But we need to have systems that protects these people so that it doesn't really come back to one person, because there's also what we call the donor fatigue. He can't continue giving forever. He would give this time 4,000, 2,000, 1,000. It will get to a point he will get tired. The individual will get tired. But if there are systems, it alleviates the stress from an individual to a system, and this system protects and also enhance young people, empower young people to thrive on their own. I was on a roundtable discussion, just to sum up, last month, and one lady was saying, young people today are lazy, we don't want stress and all that. And I was just telling her that maybe in your generation, you took pride in suffering, but we don't take pride in suffering. There's no certification or no award for suffering. We are not here to endure any suffering or all that. We are here to thrive. So if you're not here to help us thrive, please, I think you need to leave this table, because this is not the conversation we are having here. Because I'm sitting here, there's no award for suffering. So, my dear, if you want to suffer, have at it. But the young people today is looking for fulfillment, is looking for comfort, is looking to thrive and all that. And that is the conversation we need to have as a group. Thank you very much.
There's a thing with passionate people, when they're speaking and you don't stop them, they can speak the entire day. Let me put a full stop here for you, Jude, and let's listen to Nekonam Konto.
Man, I was like, there's nothing I can say now. Everyone has said everything. And honestly, you guys are like quite boring because I thought you guys were gonna be on the side of that protects the institutions and so on and so forth. But you guys have been like, damn, I'm with that. And that's what I went through. That's what I also went through. So shout out to you guys, man. You're doing like amazing work out there. And also as like everyone is speaking from Aisha to also Nekesa and Timo, Tina, I'm realizing that there's like different pockets or groups. There's the people who like work within these institutions who are trying to help the guys outside, which would be like us, the guys who like applying for grants and so on and so forth. And then there's also the ones who are what's this? I wrote this represented voices or being consulted. Like, we need some youth inclusion here. Then just to make it look cool for people out there in the media and stuff, but they never listen to anyone. So yeah, I'm realizing that, and it's a lot. And I've been what's this thing? I'm a person who's been funded by a lot of institutions. Maybe it's like three or four. And most of them I've noticed of that they like controlling everything, and they don't want to challenge they don't want anyone to challenge the systems. These and most of these systems are from the Western side, and they don't know how things work on this side, and then they judge us based on those things. And I think it's quite unfair. I think the deeper barrier is the system itself. Youth aren't necessarily excluded, they're included in very controlled ways. You are allowed to participate, but not really redesign the system you're entering. There's an assumption that leadership also must come with age, experience, or institutional approval. But, and I don't know, maybe the rest of Africa, there's like, history does not really support that. Some of the most effective leaders or leadership moments have come from people outside those boundaries. So the real barrier is that we don't question the system we're asking the youth to operate inside. And then another point that was made with, I think Aisha and also Nekesa, was how they view African youth. We're often viewed from what's this thing, a framed what's this thing, narrow lens where we African youth is vulnerable, in need, or waiting to be supported. That frame limits what people think is possible. Also, it also creates dependency on, not always intentionally, but what's this thing, structurally, where young people are pushed towards grants and approval systems instead of being given real tools and access. What gets lost is that youth are also builders, connectors, and people, I'm sorry, and problem solvers, not just beneficiaries. The framing doesn't just describe youth, it shapes what you are allowed to become, I think. So there's always this, we're gonna give you this money, this program is gonna last for 2 years, and what's this thing? This is the money, and then we're gonna give you a bunch of courses that you're gonna do within this time frame. And then throughout this, you need to let us know how much you spend, like how are you spending our money, the KPIs, like did you do this? And then another part is that, which is I think Tina who mentioned, is that some of these grants we're not even allowed to pay ourselves. Like they tell you that this is purely for the project. And then you start wondering, then how, like, do I need to get another job now? And if I get another job, then how am I going to work on this on this project that you guys, like, what's this thing, are expecting me to work on with this much KPIs? And then after that what's this thing, that maybe 24-month run, that's the end of it. There's no relation after that. Yeah, and so on and so forth. And they always think that the one thing that we need is just funding. It's never funding. It's the relations, it's the connections, it's the access to what's this thing, these government spaces and so on and so forth. Because you can get the money, then you find out that, certification costs this much, or you need to go through testing with this product and so on and so forth. And your money never, like, you don't see what your money, you never actually did the work on the project. And the money just went on those side things that you had to get out the way for you to work on the project. So this kind of leads me to like some of the questions that I wrote down as everyone was speaking. Maybe you guys can help me answer them also, which were, what would philanthropy look like if it measured success by how quickly it makes itself less necessary? And then the other one would be, are we solving problems, or are we sustaining systems that depend on these problems existing? Thank you. I think, yeah.
Awesome. Likona, thank you very much. Really amazing input today. And I like the way, of course, you changed the trajectory of the conversation, but yet still staying in line with what everybody has done. We still have a few questions to go around. We have barely 35 minutes, so I'm going to try and be a dictator at this point. Maybe just kind of limit the amount of time that each person would have to respond to a question, or better still, just limit certain questions to certain individuals so that it can just go around. So not everybody necessarily having a bite on every question that comes next. I think that should work better. And so if I've managed to keep your name in my mind or in my head, then it means that you might get more questions. If you talked a lot the first time as well, I'll limit the number of questions that comes to you in the second round. But good input from all of you there. We have touched on the barriers that continue to limit meaningful youth leadership in philanthropy. And we've talked about the funding, we've talked about tokenism, we've talked about just using young people as symbols of representation and not necessarily people who are part of conversations that happen really. We just use them as features, sort of. And so in the next phase of the conversation, I want us to look at, in fact, we've touched on this one in all of the responses that we all gave, and that has to do with how philanthropy defines or frame African youth, and how does that shape opportunities for young leaders. And I think we all touched, a bit on that in our initial responses. So I'm not going to go back to that question again, but I want us to look at what do youth-led initiatives actually need from funders and institutions to lead effectively. Although we've touched on this as well in all of our responses, but I want us to be more specific this time, and specific and very succinct, straight to the point. 60 seconds, 90 seconds or 120 seconds. Let's just hit it straight to the point. What really are we looking for as young people from funders and from institutions to be able to lead effectively? And I'll start with you, Likona, because you just ended. So let me pick it up from you again, and then we can go in reverse gear. Over to you.
Okay, I thought it was save the best for last this whole time, but it's fine. I'll take that. I'm kidding. Okay, funding matters, but youth-led initiatives often need more, like funding that's more flexible. A lot of funding is too rigid. It dictates how money must be used, and even whether founders can sustain themselves while building. And of course, I'm talking from an entrepreneur point of view now. And also, real building is iterative. That's what people kind of forget. One idea can start from like this one thing, and then it can go to another thing. What we need is the access, the networks, and networks to decision makers, not just people. There's a lot of gatekeepers in a lot of institutions. So people who can be decision makers within those ones, and long-term relationships, not just short funding cycles. That's from me. Support, I feel like support should feel less like a transaction and more like a partnership over time. Yeah, that's it. It's at 90 seconds.
Ewura, if you're speaking, you're muted.
All right, great. Likona, thank you so much for that one. Let me come to you now, Jude, if you're with us on the same question. What do we need from funders and from institutions to be able to lead effectively as young people in philanthropy?
Oh, yes. I side with my brother. I'd say trust and also partnership, because in as much as the young people is passionate and about the change they want to lead, the partnership from these organizations gives more leverage to the young business owner, because some of these businesses are established over the years, and they could give them some insight as to what has worked for them, what hasn't worked for them. And based on that, the young person can infuse their creativity to also make their decisions for themselves. So I would say partnership and trust, aside the money, because the money is key.
All right, Jude, thank you very much. Let me come to you, Timotina.
I think what we need from funders, apologies, what we need from funders is room to fail forward, right? I don't know how many of us in this room have heard of a funder or a young person who, got refunded because they failed at the initial thing they were doing. I mean, once you don't meet the criteria or the expectations, you are cut off. Best believe you are not going to receive any more funding. But there must be some form of allowance, room for you to fail forward. And when I say fail forward, it means failure with the lessons documented, right? To only strengthen the process for other young people. You are expected to be perfect. You're expected to show up like someone who has been in the game for, the 20 years or more, right? But if you are given room, well, a funder says, this is what I expect, but let's see how it goes. And then once you don't meet the expectations, they help you through it. What went wrong? How can we improve this? And then reinvest in you. I can only imagine how much of a confidence booster this would be for a lot of African young people. A lot of people start projects and they never return to them once they hit a roadblock because they feel like failures. Who is going to fund me? I couldn't even see this through. But if funders are able to just give wiggle room or enough room for young people who are leading change, who are driving philanthropy to fail forward, fail in the sense that, okay, I tried it this way, it didn't work. Can I explore this other way? And then document those learnings to strengthen the system, the process for everyone. I really believe that would be a game changer so that confidence is not crushed, even when at the beginning, at the inception of trying to build something. But we gradually learn from some of these mistakes, some of these decision-making flaws, only to become better. So that is one of the key things we need from funders. Don't expect us to be perfect, but guide us through to that place where everyone can learn quickly and then progress with whatever it is they started. Thanks.
So this is 3D.
Yeah, thank you very much, Timotina. Let me come to you, Nekesa.
Thank you. I think my fellow discussants have mentioned a lot of that, what I was going to mention. But just to ensure that we are re-emphasizing, as Timotina mentioned, a lot of the funders now look at youth organizations as pop-up NGOs where the risk is actually absorbed by them and then they do not have the risk going directly to them. So I think firstly, we need donors and funders who can absorb institutional risk because right now 100% of that risk is being passed down to the most under-resourced grassroots youth organizations. We need funders who can act as political and structural shields to some of that or most of that. And then secondly, we need material asset repatriation. We cannot expect a young person with a mobile and a faulty internet connection somewhere on Zoom, sitting under a rented space, who's thinking about rent next month, to build an organization that's sustainable. We need solutions where the physical assets that allow an organization to actually anchor itself in a community can exist so that we are no longer passerbys in our own systems. And lastly, I think Likhona mentioned it, is that we need access to the strategic networks and decision-making tables without the chaperones. We want young people to be invited to meetings where they are speaking for themselves, or we want to have those spaces, and we want to be able to have that access, unrestricted access to that without someone holding our hands. Yeah, thank you.
All right, Nekesa, thank you very much. And on this note, I think we've also touched on the next question that would have asked, how can philanthropic institutions better support and empower emerging young leaders from within and outside their structures? And I think that all of the responses we have given so far seem to have touched on this particular one, and I wouldn't want us to dwell much on it. But perhaps towards the end of the conversation, if we do have some time, I can allow for closing remarks, and then you can touch on these ones at that point. But at this juncture, let's look at what can strengthen genuine intergenerational collaborations in philanthropy. What can we do to ensure that there's some genuine, collaboration amongst our generation and the older generation? Because there seems to be some sort of a divide. And so what can we do to strengthen collaboration and to bridge that gap that exists between both generations? And this time around, let me see, maybe I can start with you, Jude.
Yeah, hi. So I think the first thing I would talk about is both generations trying to understand each other. More often than not, young people are expected to understand the older generation. But I think the older generation also needs to understand the younger generations. There's difference in work now. There's remote work. Once the young person is delivering, I don't see the need in all the theatrics that comes with these suits, tie, 9 to 5. I was watching an interview on TV3 the other time, and there was an HR professional who was talking about, who was saying that, quote unquote, Gen Zs are not difficult. Just that the older generations don't want to understand Gen Z. They just want Gen Z to understand them by all means possible. There needs to be that harmony and synergy between the two. If I understand that the older generation, fine, you want this conservative way of working, so be it. But you also need to understand the young person from their point of view, that this is how they also want to be addressed or wants to work. When there's that harmony, everybody gets to be heard truly, and everybody gets to understand each other, and it helps with the smooth running. So I think that would be my take on this. Thank you.
All right, Jude, thank you. Timotina?
Timotina has dropped off, so maybe Aicha can come in. Aicha, go ahead.
Actually, I want to comment on there was like a brilliant idea that Lichona came up with, which was about like what can we do with like the real problems that we are facing right now. Can we like wait until they are all disappeared, or like we try to like let's say, for example, build a system or like a policy that is like that is embarrassing the problems that we are facing right now. And this like bring me back to my like intervention or provocation, which was talking about the weight of the past. I mean the benefit of the weight of the past is that that thing that we can build upon to build that or to reach to that future. So if we see, for example, the problems that we were mentioning, which is like the neglection of the youth, they're always like just I mean, their voices are not really like heard. They are just numbers in like during the meetings. They are just like stated during the reports, but nothing like really like getting, I mean, affecting the, I mean, the let's say, for example, the way of philanthropy or like the future of philanthropy. They are not like being like or like integrated in co-designing the philanthropy. So I guess I would rather like go for embarrassing the problems that we are facing, because honestly, the problem, especially in Africa, I mean, the problems that we are having, it's not of like, it's like bigger than financial issues. It's bigger than
Is it me, or there seems to be some internet, challenges with Aisha's? Because I'm getting some breaks.
Am I audible?
It's good on my end.
Yeah, it's good on my end as well.
Yeah. So actually,
Please go on, Aicha.
Yeah. So actually what I was saying is that the problems that, I mean, the kind of issues that we're having in Africa is like different than the other world. Our issues, they are more like bigger than financial, bigger than logistical issues, bigger than something like materialistic, but it's more of mentality, especially the old people who like usually they can't put their trust in us like as youth. So I guess it's better if we like embarrass this sad fact, let's say, and embrace it and like try to adjust with it. Try like just to participate in a way or another. We can't remove those problems, at least like for a short term of period, maybe on the long term. But if we want to make like the real impact on a short term, there is no way to wait until these problems are gone, but it's rather like we have to act on the least materials and the least chance that we have. Thank you.
Ewura, are you back with us now? You dropped off. Ewura, can you hear us? Okay, does any other discussant want to add something before we move to the next question?
I'll answer on the intergenerational collaboration that they were talking about. Okay, when it comes to the intergenerational collaboration, it's a bit hard because I think Jude was also mentioning about like how they always like have this mindset that young people are lazy and so on and so forth. And then they just don't understand us. Let me just say that. It feels like they don't understand us most of the time. And there's a lot of ego with them and like with how they approach these situations. And there's a lot of unlearning that they have to do on their side for them to meet us where we want them to meet us at. Intergenerational collaboration breaks down when it becomes hierarchical instead of mutual. Often we are treated as learners only, and all the institutions are assumed to be the only holders of valid experience. But the world is changing fast. We're just speaking now about social media and the power of it, especially with technology and new economies. So both sides actually have something to unlearn and something to learn. The strongest collaboration happens when there's mutual respect and willingness to adjust, and not just membership in one direction. It stops being collaboration when one generation is expected to adopt more than the other. Yeah, that's my 2 cents.
In the interest of time, I think let me just jump in. Thanks everyone for the contributions. I think you're all on the same mindset. I think the last thing that came to mind is to heal the trauma of gatekeeping. There's a lot of things that come in when the older generation fear the younger generation, and then the gatekeeping starts. So we don't need to be managed. Rather, we need to actually sit down, as Likona mentioned, and work together to have these uncomfortable conversations and to also be able to share the resources that we all have. So it should be about older people acting as supportive mirrors and being able to co-invest alongside the young people. So yeah, to heal the trauma of gatekeeping, in short.
Hi, Ewura, are you back with us? Ewura, can you
Yes,
hear
I'm
us?
with you loud and clear.
Okay.
I'm wondering what's happening. Is
Ewura,
it
I can.
from my end? Hello?
Okay.
Is
No,
it
I
from my
was saying
end?
I can wrap it up for you if you're having network troubles.
Yeah, it looks like because the call keeps going on and off. So
No worries. So I like to end these sessions with a more graphic and progressive note, because at the end of the day, we are crafting the next architecture. And so I want you guys to go on a personal note. These are things you've thought of. These are, you've given us beautiful presentations. But I know there's an idea that you have in your mind to say, as a young leader, I don't want you to give me talking points. I want you to give me a picture to say, when young people start leading, if young people are going to start leading philanthropy or the next architecture of philanthropy that we're now building, what does it look like? I need you guys to be very detailed. We want it to be very picturesque. And yeah, because I was talking to another conference convener for a conference we have next week. And I asked her a simple question. I was like, how many young people are going to be in this room of 700 leaders in philanthropy? How many young people are going to be there? And she said, I have to admit, there will be less than 10. And so keep those realities at the back of your mind. Funding right now in the global sphere is about 2% is going to young people. What can next look like? And what does it look like with all of us here leading the next? What do you want to see as a young leader in the next philanthropy architecture? So just quick points, graphic points. Tell us, okay, now I'm not going to give you talking points. And this is how we wrap up this conversation. So these are all your last talking points. Give us what next looks like from a youth leadership perspective. I can see all of you are thinking, who do I pounce on next? First, rather. Aicha, do you want to take it up?
I guess we should even if we are not ready, even if the youth is not ready, we have to engage in policy making in a way or another, especially in the field of entrepreneurship. We have to orientate our interests to make it, I don't know how is the term, but social entrepreneurship, something like this. Yeah, so we have to make it we have to make our small startups to be focusing on, getting our own money, but for the benefit of the society. This is how we can frame philanthropy. And I believe that, there is a lot of youth in Algeria actually that are going to this. We have there is support actually from the government for those small startups, but those startups themselves, they need resilience. They need to resist more, because we know the government supports everything, but not to the expected extent. So we have as youth to really rely on ourselves and to focus on social entrepreneurship and just engage in a way or another. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Aicha. Nekesa, take it up. 1 minute. Give us a picture.
Oh, 1 minute. Okay. I think I'll focus on something that's been burning in me since some of the discussions are happening, and that's on the scarcity mindset. I know that a lot of what I would want to say, everyone else will chip in. But let's also look at our biggest obstacle. As Aicha mentioned, a lot of that lies in our mindset, how we govern our societies because of this, how traditional philanthropy has built the structures and successfully conditioned us to believe that the natural state is that of survival and suffering. And being the beneficiary. So I think from that comes 3 different things. We need to stop romanticizing survival to demanding material abundance, meaning we need to look at how we can be able to move away from we want young people to stop taking pride in how much they can endure on an empty stomach and actually look at resetting the baseline of their expectations so that they can dream and be bigger. The second one is we need to stop seeking permission to build our own indigenous systems. The scarcity mindset keeps our eyes glued on stuff that we are being offered rather than, and that could be a lot of things, validation, cramps, compliance issues. We're normalizing that behavior given the kind of scale that we've been given and our historical factors. We need to stop seeking permission for that, and we need to look inwards towards what has already been working for us as Africans. And the final one is we need to move away from the behavior of being polite. Being polite only comes in because of that scarcity where we are expected to be polite because we are desperate for a microgrant. We are terrified of making the room uncomfortable. We want to be well behaved. We want to sanitize what we want to say. The abundance mindset breaks that down. And that's why I think for us, it's really important not only to look at us collectively as a community, but what the scarcity mindset can do for young people. It does not, a young, hungry leader is not someone who's going to be looking at what their community would like to be doing, but someone who already has abundance will be able to have the space to imagine. So resources buy us time, time buys us imagination. So we need to look at that. And that is it. I see Tembi unmuting. Thank you.
Yeah, that is your call, your cue to say yes. Thank you, ma'am. Love that. Likona, round up thoughts.
They've said everything. But yeah, the one I want to highlight from the guests is like take up space. We're afraid to do that. We are very much afraid to do that. There's a lot of when our politicians and other people speak, they always say we need to listen to the youth, we need to include them. They just include and they just listen. They don't say this is what we heard and this is what we're gonna do. There's none of that, like from what the youth is saying. I mentioned the fellowship that I was a part of, that I'm still a part of now, because they're still running. They were listening to us. They'd be like, oh, when it started, or like it's a 1 year program. And then they're like, but now that the thing is ending, what are you guys feeling? They're like, no, dude, it can't end here. It doesn't make sense for it to end here. Like, we need help. You gave us the money. Now, how do we move on from after the money? How do we seek more grant? Because we still need to scale up. How does that look like? Then they stick around for that. And then there's alumni, and they help us reach other networks that we can't reach, because my email address can only take me so far. But they're a global organization. They can just be like, hey, there's this guy who wants to talk to you. Do you want, don't you mind having a meeting with them? Those type of things. So yeah, let's just not listen. They must just do now, not like based on what they heard from us.
Would love to hear it. And closing it up for us, Jude, what are your closing points?
Yes, so I have few points. I'll start with the need to start shifting away from the cultural norm that young people like this, young people like that. And for Africans, it's really enshrined in our culture. And so it will take some work for us to move from that to trusting young people. One, trusting them to be in the room and engaging them meaningfully, not just as a piece of decoration. Trusting young people to lead without micromanaging, building systems to enable young people, young leaders and young people, and also leaving room for them to prototype, for them to pilot, leaving room for them to try, fail, learn, and try again. And lastly, for us young people ourselves to also create an enabling environment for other young people to also try. And I think the last thing I would want to say is to all young people, don't shrink yourself for anybody's comfort. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We've talked about policy, that how youth leadership will then need to engage in policy. We need to start our social enterprise formats. We need to stop having a scarcity mindset, stop romanticizing struggle, build our own indigenous systems. We need to stop being polite and take up space. We need to partner up and build connections and connect the next person, send down the ladder or request a ladder from high up. And we need to build enabling systems and environments that will allow youth leadership to thrive in African philanthropy and philanthropy in general. Ladies and gentlemen, to our discussants, to the provocateur, to our moderator, you guys have been amazing. these talking points, we're taking all of this, it's building up to a policy brief, but beyond that, we're also seeing that we actually then need to pilot a whole project based on advocacy around enabling environment in philanthropy that is from a youth perspective. And so we're going to call on all of you again to help us curators, to help us do this and build it together. Next week's link, we are on number 6. The link to join session 7 next week is already posted in the chat. I think that one is going to be on digital futures of philanthropy with, yes, it's digital futures of philanthropy. So please do join us again next week, same time, same place. From me and the AYPN team, thank you, Siyabonga. It's a wrap. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having us. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.